Welcome, everyone, to our Bronzeville Smart plug-in series. This is our third quarter meetup from the point that we introduced our new campaign, Bronzeville Smart, Smart Home, Smart Community, Smart City. We had made a commitment that we were going to have these quarterly meetups to continue to inform our community and stakeholders. This is a commitment of the Black Metropolis Technology Commission, and several of them are here today. We are fortunate that CAN TV is recording today. They've been covering different parts of this series, and so we have some good documentation on some of the things that we've been trying to do collectively. I do want to recognize this morning that our Alderman Pat Dow, is here with us today. Appreciate you being here. We're going to share some announcements and updates at the end of the program because we have a really full schedule for us today. And we're going to begin with a tour of the IT microgrid. So often you've been hearing us talk about the Bronzeville Community of the Future being the nation's first clustered microgrid. And that project is underway, but it's happening because IIT had an existing microgrid that's allowing us to create that demonstration. So as we talked more about this, we continued to find folks who were saying, I need to know more about the IIT microgrid and what that means. And so we said, let's start there as well. So I really want to thank IIT's External Affairs and Community Affairs for having us, for setting us up here at the Galvin Electric Center. And so what we're going to do is I'd like to introduce Professor Mohammed to, one, let him know how appreciative we are for his work, and not only the Bronzeville Community of the Future, but all of the things that have been happening through a variety of different demonstrations and pilots that you're going to see more about. So Professor Mohammed, we welcome you and thank you for having us here at the center. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much, Paula. Yeah, my name is Mohammed Shahidpour. I'm a faculty at IIT. I've been here for over 35 years as a university professor. And where you are here, this is the 16th floor of our IIT tower that we have converted to a demonstration for the university microgrid. IIT microgrid, which can be islanded in case there is a major outage in the Chicago area, electricity outage, is used for sort of discussions by different people at the government level, industry, universities. They come here to visit what we have. And one significant issue that you'll see shortly is the fact that we are working with our local utility, ComEd, to build a second microgrid in the Bronzeville area, which we really are proud of it, to be part of it. And the Bronzeville microgrid, which starts from the corner of 35th and State, moving sort of southeast, is going to be interconnected with the IIT microgrid to the extent that if there is again a major electricity outage in this area, these two microgrids will be linked, will be interconnected from electrical point of view. And then we will be able to shut non-essential loads at IIT in order to provide electricity to critical loads, namely the police station and the Chicago Fire Station and other locations within the Bronzeville community in order to feed power, because there are some loads at IIT that are considered as non-essential, non-critical. So we can sort of disconnect those and make sure that the community in this area will be provided with sufficient electricity. Our peak load at IIT is about 12 megawatt, from those of you who sort of know these kind of jargons. And Bronzeville is about 10 megawatts. So the total electricity load in this area is 22 megawatts, which is significant. And we will be able to keep the lights on in case there's an emergency. This kind of technology could be used and will be used in other parts of the United States. And I traveled extensively to talk about this technology people in other parts of the United States and perhaps other parts of the world. One good example of this technology, the implementation of that, would be in places like in islands, in Puerto Rico, for instance, or U.S. Virgin Islands and areas similar to those, where by converting the entire island or the region to a microgrid, you can identify loads that are critical, for instance, the hospital or the security building, and use the control technology to sort of disconnect non-essential loads and make sure that those essential loads, namely hospital, will remain energized. So this technology will be of critical importance to demonstrate how the future of electricity is going to look like. We believe that from a sort of a steady state point of view, like days like this, where sun is shining and everybody is happy, this kind of technology could be used in order to save money, to create jobs. Because as you develop these new technologies similar to cell phone technology, as they came around, they brought along many, many jobs to this country, people who developed the technology, people who got into the marketing aspects of that and all of that. We believe the same thing will happen to this microgrid technology, that hopefully it will bring many new jobs to the Chicago area. And also this technology could be used, as I said, the city state, that like days like this, could also be used in cases where there is an emergency, let's say in Chicago, for either physical or cyber issue. We can make sure that the lights in Chicago will stay on, the ones that are critical, the ones that we need to keep on for our elderly, for economically disadvantaged people, and for areas that are important to the city. Should we start? Okay, so we should go. So why don't you follow me?
Hope you guys enjoyed the chance to get a direct update on this very important infrastructure technology that, as was pointed out, has been operational and up and running here at IIT for a number of years. IIT has been leading in so many areas for so long. Some of us remember fondly that this building used to be referred as ITRI. I'm probably, Howard, are we the only people that remember? We're old enough to remember ITRIs? Okay, so we'll stop there. But this place never stops innovating and keeps doing some things that have impacts not only here in Chicago and in Bronzeville, but of course around the country and around the world. And our next speaker is the person who's going to be a part of probably one of the most dramatic inflection points in the history of this great institution. Myself, who spent a lot of time in information technology and communications, certainly respect the contributions of the Galvin family and all they represent to the Chicagoland area and the world of communications and their great commitment. In fact, there was a time where the institution was considering, was Chicago still the place to be the anchor for this? And I think I remember directly that the Galvin family thought a long time about how much this institution meant to them personally and how much it means to them as being a part of Chicago, and most definitely wanted to stay the course of being a part of this south side of Chicago. And so I guess I can say that I've been around long enough to see a number of institutions that probably needed some technical assistance on spelling the word entrepreneurship get to the point where it's become in favor. And it's absolutely wonderful that the university reached out to one of Chicago's legendary entrepreneurs to lead this inflection point in the Kaplan Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I've had the great pleasure of knowing Howard a pretty long time. Actually met him one day. He walked into a store that I was working in. It was one of the early purveyors of something called a PC. And I think it was absolutely his curiosity that led him into the store. He really didn't have any reason to be there. But Howard is one of the most curious people that I know. And that curiosity has led him to be a very important and favorite person of mine for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's an attorney that has decided to do something meaningful with his life, and that's not practice law. And a lot of people don't know that he is an attorney, quite a distinguished person graduating from my alma mater, Northwestern, but he graduated from the law school. But he, again, a lot of people who have a great propensity for success in academics sometimes go in directions that don't allow them to pursue both their passion and their opportunity to give back. But that's not Howard. Howard has started and run a lot of successful companies from the ground up. So he absolutely knows what it's all about to meet a payroll, to find good talent, to create a market opportunity. And then, again, kind of separating him, he knows when to get out. One thing I teach when I work with a lot of smaller businesses in terms of their startup effort is to have them consider an exit strategy. And I think Howard probably can teach the master course on an exit strategy because he's had some phenomenal exits, but he never stops of figuring out what his next opportunity is. And so many times he leaves, it seemingly, to those of us on the outside, say, why would you leave this now? After, putting so many things on the map here in Chicago, I had the occasion of working directly with Howard for a very exciting 2 years as he pulled this idea together called Flashpoint Academy. And he caught a very important time in the market, and a lot of people, we were running around talking about digital media, and people were looking at us like, what are they talking about? And that institution has gone on to achieve a tremendous amount of success. And then he went from there to being involved with 1871. And again, these are, I can't even say, this must be Howard's 21st act. I don't even know what act he's on. He has moved so fast. But Howard has some personality and some core philosophies and attributes that are very, very important. And one of the ones that I think is most important is his absolutely ferocious loyalty to friends and people that he meets along the way. And you can have no better supporter than Howard Tolman if you're trying to do anything meaningful. If you don't have anything meaningful to do, he probably doesn't have much time for you. But if you're actually trying to do something, he'll give you not only his time, but his complete Rolodex, his total dedication and attention, and absolutely making sure that you get across the finish line as he's continuing to move about. So don't confuse the fact that he's speedy with his ability to garner what you're trying to do and determine how he might, in fact, add value. So again, our conversation today is we're welcoming Howard to this community of Bronzeville. Paula Robinson and myself, the co-founders of the Urban Innovation Center, have been hard at work doing all we can to put Bronzeville on the map when people think about technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And so we're delighted to welcome a fighter in this regard. He is welcome to this, I won't say war of attrition, because we're not going anywhere, he's not going anywhere, this institution isn't going anywhere. So it's a welcome addition to this party and this opportunity of accomplishment when he and I were in the room just about a week ago, and much to my surprise, maybe not Howard, because he knows what people are thinking before they say something, but when the mayor said that Bronzeville was going to be the epicenter of growth, and he said maybe not 1 year, maybe not 2 years, but 10 years, people are going to finally recognize that Bronzeville is where the next major action will take place in Chicago. Well, like I say, I was a little stunned, but Howard said, hey, I'm glad he read my memo. So, and the deputy mayor, Mr. Rifkin, said, hey, he says this all the time. This is his new stump speech. So I think all of you in the room are in the room at the right place in the right time. Without further ado, my good friend, Howard Tolman.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Those were very kind words, and I really do appreciate it. And the mayor generally does stick to the script, so I'm pleased. He actually, was part of the conversation was about something we were really super excited about, and that sort of has to do with the recent announcement that we're bringing DMG Mori to the campus, which is a 12,000 employee Japanese and German international company. They're going to move from Hoffman Estates, build some new facilities here, train a new workforce, hire a lot of our engineers, and actually demonstrate their unbelievable machines and equipment. These are multi-million-dollar machines that create metal fabrication. Instead of simply printing something in 3D printing in plastic, this actually works in metal. So they work with Tesla, they work with Apple, pretty amazing. And they literally are looking for a place to work and to connect to a university that can give them employees for years to come in the future. So it's great, and we just announced that, and we brought that back as part of the trip that the mayor and I took recently to China and Japan. So, as Bruce said, I'm gonna talk to you today about the Kaplan Center, and my slides are moving, but I don't see this moving. Let's see if I can resume this show. Hold on one second. How's that? Nope. All right, see, Bruce, you talked about my technology way too soon here. Maybe I have to turn this on. Okay, let's see. Boom. So this is the Kaplan Center. So just in case you haven't walked a little bit north, it's about 68,000 square feet of space. Honestly, this isn't turning on. Okay, 68,000 square feet of space, 2 stories. It'll house our maker lab. It'll house classrooms and assembly areas and all kinds of different resources. And it's intended to be a resource for both undergraduate and graduate students and for the community to teach entrepreneurship and innovation to our engineers. So it'll come online fully on October 25th, and we're really excited. The good news is the building is done. The slightly less exciting news is we're not sure what's going to go on in the building. This was absolutely one of these, well, let's build it and then we'll figure it out. So this is sort of an example of that. But what we do know is that it's going to be a central place, and it will extend all that we do there throughout the whole rest of the campus. And we want it to be both an engine for sort of innovation and for entrepreneurship, and a magnet to draw students and faculty and the community and sort of the world here, and to also be a tool that's going to let us take student ideas, faculty ideas, and also work with organizations to move those ideas to invoices and also to create basically everything that's in between. And the thing that we know is that everybody has had at least a few ideas in their life. The trick is to build a system that can help to turn those into reality and to monetize those, and to go down this sort of pipeline, starting with this whole idea of inventing new things, and then basically figuring out how to make them better and to constantly improve them and to make them transformative. And we think that the whole university, one of the things I love to talk about is how 30 or 35% of our incoming students every year are first generation in their family to be part of the college experience. And at 1871, we had companies every single week that would come in and would say to us, we need diverse technical talent. You know, we would say, here's a quarter, take the green line or the red line and go down to IIT. And they literally didn't even know that it was there. I mean, it's astonishing how underappreciated the school is and the community is as a resource. So we see it as a magnet for all of these different things. And we also understand that as much as, you know, IIT invented the cell phone and as much as other wonderful things have gone on here, you have to keep moving, because if you don't keep moving, basically you discover that time has a way of, you know, sort of catching up with you and really bypassing you. And one of the interesting things is this was probably one of the first places in the world for interdisciplinary studies and for this idea of what we call our iPro program. And the significance of that is that not so many years ago, you could be sort of stuck in your discipline. And today, every single problem that emerges is a problem that it requires expertise across a lot of different areas. And the universities don't do this very well. The universities are very siloed. So one of the goals of Kaplan is to be a place where different departments and groups and technologies can be brought together, and we can be sort of the front door that we address problems that are brought to us by companies and corporations and communities and things like that. So you have to change today, and if you don't change, basically you die. It's not that exciting a prospect. But the truth is that one of the reasons that we spent $40 million on a building is to demonstrate a commitment to change and to the future. And also, it's important to understand that as classic an institution as this has been, you can't stand still. You really have to sort of say, well, both, we want to combine what has worked in the past and what the great assets are of this place with what the future opportunities are going to be. And so our view is pretty simple. I mean, we want to combine three things really, which is technical skills, the idea of hands-on experiential learning, very, very central here, and then to address things that actually matter. So I always say that, we don't want to invent the 400th new social network. We want to actually focus on things that are important. And we want to change the culture, and the culture has been a very traditional culture around here. And, what we've concluded is that you change it by doing things, and then people either join the parade or get out of your way or you run over them. And, we that's the least pleasant outcome, but that's the strategy, and you have to bring that kind of energy, that kind of a thick skin. And as Bruce said, it's not a war limited to a war of attrition, but it's a war of getting up one more time than you've been knocked down. And if you do that, then eventually things happen. It's also not something that happens top down. It's not something that, we just write a memo about and then all this wonderful stuff happens. And it's also not something that happens because a lightning bolt sort of hits you in the head or an apple falls out of a tree. It happens because you feel the heat of what's going on around you. And in education, the heat is really on, and the world is really changing. And, this is not the most polite and pleasant conversation you can have with folks who've been doing things the same way for a very long time. Sort of what happens in these kinds of environments is, oh my goodness, change is really hard and change is really challenging and things like that. And the answer is that if you don't change, then you won't be here much longer. And I always recommend when I talk to business groups that if they don't understand the consequence of rapid change, they can take out their Blackberries and they can sort of look and see just how the world has sort of changed. And today is a sort of historic day. Today, Apple has become the first company in history to be worth more than $1 trillion. And that's really astonishing. And that's in a period of maybe 15 years. It's just really striking. So how does that apply to education? Well, I'll give you sort of an example from another of my many sort of shabby careers when I was in the music business. And we all know what's happened to the music industry, which is people have stopped buying music. But here's what's interesting, and it's that while they've stopped buying music, they really haven't stopped listening to music. And what has happened is that access has continued to grow, whereas the sale of hard goods has gone down. And this idea of the fact that they didn't stop is exactly the same with education. And this is the huge risk, because it's not going to go on just in the buildings on this campus. It's not going to go on just from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. More options, more distribution systems, more sharing, more learning at the library, learning at home, learning from your peers. All of these channels are going to be part of education going forward. And we need to be a part of that too, because no one owns the student today. You have to earn that every single day. And the reason for that is they have an unlimited number of choices. And so we have a little depressing definition that we often use of loyalty. I say depressing because this is not the best news in the world, which is that I just haven't seen something better yet. But that's the truth. That's the truth. That's sort of the competitive edge. So what we say about businesses and schools and representatives and the whole 9 yards is that you have to earn my loyalty. Otherwise, I'll go somewhere else. So when we talk about change, we talk about the speed of change, and we call this autocatalytic. And what that means is that every time there's a change, lo and behold, the next change comes along even more quickly. And so when we look at institutions, you could talk about how fast do they presently do their business. That's okay. But the real trick, the real competitive measurement is how fast are they getting faster? And if people are changing outside of your world more quickly than you are, then you're going to be left behind. And I always like to tell my kids and their kids this, which is that today, and this is frightening but true, today is the slowest rate of change for the rest of our lives, the slowest. And so that's the cycle that we're on. And, we talk about racing. In racing, what you learn is nobody waits for you, not the world, not the racers, So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to change, the need to do it very quickly. We have this really picturesque place, which doesn't have Kaplan on here yet. But being in a university is a really interesting thing, and it's sort of a mixed blessing because on the one hand, it's not hard to overcome and to cause change. It's hard to overcome getting over what used to work really well for you and that you were comfortable with and that was okay. And that's a big difference. And sometimes, when you meet with groups of administrators or with trustees and things like this, you get a lot of sort of commitment, but you don't necessarily get a lot of action unless you really push the envelope. And the thing that we know is that if you just stand still, then you're going to slide quickly backwards. And so we didn't make this commitment to just get started. We made this commitment because of something I believe and have believed forever, and that is that you can be sloppy in business because you're only dealing with dollars and cents, but in education you're dealing with people's lives, and this is a sin not to help the students become successful going forward, and it's really an issue of mortgaging their future. So we don't think it's going to be easy. We never say it's easy. People ask me all the time, that famous expression, are you having fun yet? And I say no, ever, because it's not a question of having fun. It's a question of, is what you're doing important, and is it worth doing, and is it going to make a difference? And, one of the things that we really want the students to understand is what professional means. And what it means is that every day you do this work. Some days it's harder than others. Some days it takes a lot of stress and things like that, but you have to do it, and you have to do it every single day. The change is that you have to do it at lightning speed these days, and you have to do it while the world is sort of happening to you. We actually have these things today. We're putting down the sod around Kaplan, so we actually have these steamrollers out there, but it reminded me that on any day you can sort of beat it, but you can't beat it and you can't stop if you want to keep up. So, where we're at is a very interesting sort of situation. A lot of the things that used to work aren't going to work. A lot of the ways we did things, the changes are not going to be a little bit different. The changes are going to be not a little bit better. They're going to be radical. And the business models that we deal with all the time are constantly changing. And here's the thing, once you get used to the convenience of, let's say, Uber or something like that, once you see the model change, you almost forget and you can't go backwards. And so I'll give you a quick example of this. I'm going to show you an image, and half of you, because of the way your brains and your eyes work, are going to see one thing, and the other half are going to see another. But from now on, you'll see both. And that's the way sort of innovation works too. So here it is. So some of you think this is a duck, and some of you think this is a rabbit. And if you don't see both of those, you can close either of your eyes, and that'll adjust your brain. But the idea is this is how this stuff works. This is how innovation works. And all of these things we take for granted, and then lo and behold, they turn around and change. So I'm not going to really talk about Amazon, but I wanted to just address this idea that entrepreneurs look at the way things have always been done, and then they see things differently. And this is, sort of a super duper architect. And we discover that what you really have to do, and what we hope that the Kaplan Institute is going to do, is address all of these kinds of new needs, all of these kinds of new opportunities, create an environment that starts today and goes forward in perpetuity. And so there's a few questions. One is why? Why did we do this? First of all, we know that we need more scientists and we need more designers and we need more engineers than ever. We need the talent to be different. They have to be entrepreneurial. They're not all going to have that job description, but they all need to be entrepreneurial. They need to be innovative. And they need to be diverse because you never know who's going to bring you your future. And if you aren't inclusive these days, you end up with just part of a solution. And the good news is some of these things sound like wishful thinking, and some of these things are actually objective facts. So to give you some idea, when we look at the venture-backed businesses in the last few years that have been successful, immigrants and first-generation workforce college graduates have been significant in terms of that. In addition, they've started over half of the companies that today we say are the biggest. And honestly, they represent only about 15% of the workforce, but they are overrepresented in terms of being entrepreneurs, in terms of having loyalty and energy and being hungry and all of that. So within our context, 26% or so of our incoming classes are from these populations. A huge amount of the class is female, which is a growing number and very hard to come by in technology schools by and large. And then, as I said before, about 25% are the first ones to attend college. And here's what's really significant about that. In terms of why we built it, it's because in addition to being diverse and everything else, they have these characteristics that is what every business is looking for. So they want hardworking and loyal employees. They don't want people that are going to graduate and go work at Google on the West Coast or go to New York. They want folks that are going to stay here, folks that are available now. So when I talk to these business audiences, I say, you know, stop whining about the need for the talent and come see us, and we can help you fill those needs. And in addition, don't come because you think you're doing us a favor, because that's not really why we want you to come. We want you to come because you understand that this is a smart thing to do. And it's not because you're a good sport or a good Samaritan. This is life. And if you can't read this, this basically says, says it all. So the idea of this is that this is how important the future is. And if we can look at your job these days and we can reduce it to a set of rules and instructions, you won't have that job much longer. If we pay you to do the same thing over and over again, pretty soon a machine will figure that out. But the real key is that today what you earn is based on what you learn and what you keep learning. And so that's half of the story. And the other half of the story that's really important is that in these sort of ministerial jobs, that's not where the future is of making a living and making a life either. And so it's in the creative jobs, it's in the jobs that require thinking in order to be successful. And so when we say we want to take these engineers and we want to add innovative skills and entrepreneurship training and things like that, it's to make them more successful, not simply as students, but more successful in life. So the why is pretty clear. The where should be very, very clear. First of all, we're the only really tech-centric university in the city, and we're really in the heart of the city in terms of that. Second of all, we started a lot of these, as I said before, these interdisciplinary and interprofessional programs. That's our iPro program. And so building it here was really important. One, because we're going to be training people for careers that don't even exist. Who knew that there was going to be a need for drone pilots, outside of the military? Who knew that these kinds of skills are going to be required? They're going to use technologies that literally we'll invent here, but they haven't necessarily been invented yet. And these will address problems that we think we understand, but some of these are not even things that we know to be problems. So those are sort of the objective facts of what it's going to take to be successful in the future. A couple of other things that we know as well is that all of this stuff is going to be interdisciplinary, that the university model of I'm just a mechanical engineer or I'm just a social scientist, not working, not going to work. And that going forward that the people who are most successful at integration, the people who are most successful at bringing these things together, are going to be the ones as organizations and institutions that succeed, and also that train the best prospective employees. So what do we got? You know, we've got top talent and access. We've got active recruitment opportunities, and the people that we train here stick around, and this is very important. And we have students that are sort of focused in the right direction. So one of the things that we know is that the most talented students today are not simply students who want to show up, but they're students who are committed to doing a certain kind of work, to making a difference. They want to work with other talented students and with faculty that isn't like phoning it in, but that is actively engaged in this stuff. And frankly, and most interesting of all, is that in the future, the new 5 years of startups are not going to be sort of marketing driven. They're going to have technology at the core, whether it's cybersecurity or telemedicine or Internet of Things or machine learning or augmented intelligence. We're not going to build a lot of new businesses that will send somebody out to brush your teeth, or that will, you know, do dog and cat mating, you know, sites. I mean, these are important. I think dogs and cats should have a social life, just not exactly the kind of thing that we would like our students to be focusing in on. So on the other hand, around advanced manufacturing, around new materials, around all of these automation issues and robotics issues, tremendous opportunities. And also in terms of the Internet of Everything and virtual reality. So when you synthesize all of these things about the importance, the focus, the kind of work that's being done, what you want to say is that we're not going to be in the next few years dealing with convenience, but we're going to be dealing with things that have a certain degree of criticality, that are important social issues that make a difference in the lives of lots of people. And, you know, all of these technologies continue to be accelerating in really powerful ways. Facial recognition, just to give you an idea, the machines now are far better at facial recognition than we are. And I want you to know that facial recognition is not so easy. So when you try to tell the difference between the dog and the donut, it turns out that it's hard. It's hard. And to train the machine to really be successful at this, it takes a great deal of talent and resources. But the truth is, in this example, which is sort of goofy, I can tell you that the machines now read X-rays 20% more accurately and 50% faster than any human being does. And they get it right because they've seen thousands and thousands, and no human being has. And so, so that's what's going on. And then what do we build? What are we going to put in this new environment? I mean, basically, we're building the technologists of tomorrow. We want our engineers to be really entrepreneurial and to deal with startups and digital information. And then how do we build it? Basically, you know, and Bruce can sort of tell you this, you have to get started, and it's not going to be perfect on day one. This is, in fact, what we want to teach the students as well, which is that if you wait till things are perfect, you're never going to get anything done. So we want to get started, and we want to build a place that you can dream about. And again, for all of our neighbors, especially, and you know, I teach this class on entrepreneurship at the Diet High School, which is at 51st Street. And watching these kids' lives change because they understand that they have a lot more prospects and possibilities in their lives than just being a policeman or a fireman or whatever is very powerful, and it's really life-changing. So number one is aspirational. Number two is to put together a team that models the behavior. And, you know, we think that that's equally important. Because really, innovation is okay, but what is the proof of the pudding is how hard are you willing to work? How much do you want it? And if you want it, then that's what happens. The second important part of this is to bring together people that actually know what they're talking about. Anybody can give you their impressions and their ideas, but what we want is to bring to the campus experienced entrepreneurs, experienced innovators, and we have access to those in ways that were important. So number one is to get started. Number two is to focus. So Focus is really critical. There's a million different opportunities. We think a few of these are going to rise to the top that are going to be most important to the university. I think that Confucius probably actually didn't say this, but I think he should have said it, which is that if you try to be all things to all people, you're not going to be successful. We don't think we can do that. But we want to make meaningful partnerships. We want to address important problems, and we want to do those in the way that will become the style of the organization. And the style is also pretty straightforward. The style is we're going to work unbelievably hard. We're going to be proud, and this is important. It's important to be proud of what you're doing because it's hard work, and stick to our guns and basically understand that not everything works the first time or the 50th time, but if you don't keep going, it'll never work. And then to commit, and that's sort of something that we say, you fail and you fail again, and you just learn from every time that happens. And then lastly, excellence. And the bottom line of all of this is, our shorthand is you don't get very far with hope as a strategy or with wishful thinking. You get really far if you work really hard. So at 1871, we learned another interesting lesson, which is if you tried to put together a rule book, a workbook, a set of guidelines, it would be almost impossible. It's just too complicated. Things change too quickly. So what we have is a culture basically that is based on here's the goal, here's what I expect, and you get there in the best and fastest way that you can. And that's really important because we can't prescribe all the rules that it's going to take to manage a future that we don't even understand yet. But we can understand and we can set up a methodology that permits us to do that. So results are important. Output is important. It's really, really critical to have standards, but the standards have to be flexible, because if you're just sort of trying to subscribe to a series of rules that are stuck in the past, then you're not going to be really successful at all. So we don't look backwards. I mean, we believe that you can learn lessons from the past, but that you have to go forward. We also have a unique and sort of arrogant posture, which is that the fact that nobody did this before doesn't really mean anything to us. We're not going to let the fact that it hasn't been possible before. And then we really want to build, and this is true from our high schools to colleges to the rest of the world, these are the skills that it's going to take to be successful in the future. These are really the skills. And the trick is that how do we put this into our high schools? How do we give these kids the skills for tomorrow? And one of the most important things we talk about all the time is what kind of person would you hire? And this is really interesting because I think most people would say, well, I want somebody who's really smart. And so our answer is slightly different. So our answer is that the most valuable employees aren't the ones who have all the answers, because here's a flash, nobody has all the answers, okay? What the most important employees are today are employees who are curious and who can help us to identify around the corner and the things that we don't yet appreciate and the questions that we need to address, not necessarily the answers. And we also have an obligation to the university to be a viable enterprise, and that's important too. We have to pay our bills. And so we have to understand that it has to be a business that connects to other businesses, that delivers value for them, that makes them successful as well. And if we can do that, then we can really win. So it's a question not just of contributions, but a question of commitment. And my shorthand for that is bacon and eggs. So you may not understand what that means, but we think of the chicken as making a contribution, but the pig actually makes a serious commitment because, so anyway, just shorthand. But look, we want to deliver value. We want to attract businesses and organizations and all kinds of different enterprises, schools, in order to deliver a system that improves and works for everybody. And it'll be driven by technology, but that's not enough. You need to have vision, and you need to understand that it takes a great deal of optimism, but that's what this is all about. And then how does it work? Well, here's what's really interesting about IIT. First of all, our graduates do amazingly well. This school is probably the most transformative school, certainly number 1 or 2 in the country in terms of lifting people up. So they do better economically. We're able to move them from the lowest rung of the economic sort of world to the highest rung when they leave here. They're number 2, as I said, in this idea of upwardly mobile. And that's really critical because that's how you build up a whole city. It's not simply that you build some great stuff downtown, but it's how do you help everyone in all the communities and throughout the city be successful. And then you have this little matter of how do you pay for it. And the good news about that is that innovation always pays for itself. So just to give you some ideas of what's happening today with technology, JP Morgan just announced that they'll save 300,000 plus hours a year and do now those tasks in seconds because of technology. One of our 1871 companies uses the phone to do collision estimating. Allstate a couple of years ago laughed at that as an idea. Today, Allstate announces that they're closing all their drive-in centers. Why? Because we do things in 3 days instead of 3 weeks. We do 20 of these things a day per adjuster instead of 1 or 2. And so innovation is really going to change our lives, and it's going to become part of what we expect. And we differentiate innovation from invention. It's really important. Inventing things is hard. We have plenty of engineers here, and they invent things all the time. But it's risky because you don't know if it's going to work. Innovation is pretty straightforward. It's like you look at how things have been done, and you say, how can I do these things better? And even just a little bit better, but constantly raising the bar and constantly trying to improve. And, you can call that sort of small ball. I mean, this is one of the wealthiest guys in the world. And he's forever saying, I don't want to, climb some super duper mountain. I just want to find the quickest and easiest path to what I need to get done. So when we talk about instruction in innovation, we believe that it's as precise a set of processes as anything else is. It's certainly as precise as engineering. It's just that people don't really understand it. And so that's what we're going to do at the KI. And thinking about technology, it's a very interesting thing. When we look at most technologies, most people would say, well, how can this help me do what I do better? That's okay, but that's about half the story. The other half of the story is how can this technology let me do things that I never was able to do before? And so that's what we're focusing in on, is how to improve these kinds of things. We want to do it in a concrete way, a way that's measured. And we also want to do it in a way that basically says that we don't accept this idea of, it is what it is. I mean, what we think, frankly, is that the world going forward is going to be what we make of it. And we think that we can make a very special and different place. It's going to take a lot of partnerships. It's going to take a lot of cooperation. It's not going to happen tomorrow, as the mayor said. But here's the good news, and I tell this to all our students, that you have this remarkable opportunity to have sort of future satisfaction and gloating. And why is that? Because one day pretty soon, the people who didn't believe in this, the people who thought it couldn't be done, are going to point back and say, gee, I knew you win. And so that's what we're aiming for, and that's the kind of place that we want to build. That's the kind of students we want to turn out. And that's what the future looks like to us. So thank you very much. No. Wait, are you raising your hand, Jeannie? Right. So the grand opening, again, is October 25th. And we'll have a press conference at 1:30-ish and some tours of the new building. And then that's the principal activity. And then the next day we'll have sort of an open house for all our students and the community at large and things like that. So those are the dates. Yes, ma'am.
You hit it right on the head about affordability, but affordability for the students. One of the things that they say is that we are burdening students with debt, student loans, what is this going to cost the average student to go through the program?
Well, I think that, the answer to that is, years ago, IIT had really aggressive internship and apprenticeship programs and co-op programs, and those have sort of gone by the boards. One of the goals of Kaplan is to bring companies in and to say we can put together teams of students and faculty and graduate students to help you solve real problems. And so our goal is to help them in ways that eliminate a lot of the student debt. One of the other things that we're doing is working with employers when they come, like the DMG Maury that I mentioned. One of the things they're doing right off the bat is putting on campus a full-time recruiter. And one of the other things is we're talking to all of these companies about a perk, which would be part of the reason they would be an attractive employer, and that is to help their students each month reduce the student debt and to figure out ways to do that. Honestly, one of the crazy things that's going on is one of the few kinds of debt that you can't get out from under is student debt. I mean, it's not extinguishable in bankruptcy and things like that. And we've been talking about ways to help the students as they graduate literally refinance that debt to take advantage of the fact that today they're probably paying 10% interest and you could, borrow money at 2% and your, frankly, your savings account isn't doing you much good in that respect. So, we think that we have extremely employable graduates. We think that one of the things the university will be looking at is how to set up ways that they can graduate with materially less debt. Education is not inexpensive. It doesn't happen by accident, but that doesn't mean that we can't put in place, and we hope to put in place programs that'll help eliminate that sort of hangover. Right now, student debt is probably the biggest single issue we have in the whole world. I think we have about 1.3 trillion people that have student debt now, and it's an average of about $30,000. About 40 million people have student debt.
Door school online, $2,500.
Yeah.
You pay, to get your degree, and they guarantee you a job in the tech industry.
Yeah, I wish them the best. I think that it's successful in certain respects. And it's successful at certain levels of employment, okay? We've built several schools that have been high-end vocational schools. I don't think everybody needs to go to a 4-year school. I think there are ways to eliminate time. What really the issue is we have to change the game of what credentials mean. If credentials have to mean that you pay an expensive amount to get a credential and you sat in a chair for 4 years, that's crazy. If you talk to Sal Khan or you talk to educators, they'll tell you it should be based on mastery, which is when have you mastered the material, and then you go on, and if you can get done in 2 years, more power to you. There's no magic to spending 4 years and incurring that kind of additional financial responsibility. So I don't think, honestly, and Bruce, can give you his opinion. I don't think you learn this stuff for $2,500 in 15 minutes. And by the way, the success, well, okay.
Are you operating as a coder now?
Okay. Well, I think, listen, I think, by the way, I think this is one thing that I would tell every single parent, which is kids should study coding, but coding is not an end in itself. What it does is it teaches you to be analytical and to be thoughtful and stuff like that. But the truth is that I think we're going to see ways to reduce the cost of education. But what I started to say is that the completion rate for online education is minuscule. It is minuscule because we really haven't changed the way it's delivered. And if it's just me standing up and talking for an hour to people that are distributed across the world who we think might be listening, it doesn't work. It just has not worked. And so we're going to have to figure out a better interactive, smaller bite system to do distance learning, and then maybe it will work.
Cost of it down.
Yeah.
The accessibility to the population here, especially in the Bronzeville community. Awareness and the costs are critical. We've got to understand that the average parent doesn't have in their budget the money to send their children to college to these IIT. It's been here for
Yeah.
years. Why has not the community taken advantage of it? It's been the cost. That's the real issue. And then the next thing is that when they exit, where are the jobs that are attached to it? And with that being said, how are they going to pay that debt back?
Well, we think the jobs are there. We think the awareness of IIT as a pool of talented students is at about zero, so it's going to be pretty easy, we think, to have Kaplan be one way of starting to put the school really on the map. And we're looking at a lot of different things to do that. But let me say that you have to fix the fundamentals first, because just improving the marketing materials is not really going to serve the students. But Alan, our president, says all the time that he doesn't think our obligation should be focused on did they graduate with good grades. It's are they going to be successful in life? And with a giant albatross of thousands or hundred thousands of dollars of debt across classes, they're not going to be successful. So that's going to have to change. So yes, Alderman.
You mentioned earlier your involvement in diet.
Yeah.
Can you just
Sure.
talk about some of what you've seen
Sure.
and what recommendations?
Well, so I can tell you the plan. So we went down there to Beulah McLeod, and diet had been closed. And the parents, if you don't know the background, the parents had a hunger strike, and diet was reopened as an art school. In the first year, we had 150 students. Now we're going into our third year. So second year, we had 220 students. So now we have freshmen and sophomore, and this year we'll have freshmen, sophomore, and junior, and then finally next year we'll have a full school again. This school was as many as 1,200 students when it was thriving, and under about 150 when it was going to be closed. It's right just at the edge of Washington Park. So we built a new classroom in the school with all new equipment, and we took 25 of the freshmen and we gave them a 12-week course in entrepreneurship, which I taught, and we wrote a book which Beulah edited, and they carry it with them still, which I'm really happy about. And we improved their academics and we improved their attendance. We did it the following year. Our sophomores took a class in coding, which was taught by Neil Salas Griffin. And we now have identified 6 other schools sort of around the same area whose principals were aware of this, and we hope to expand that. And that'll be a combination of the in-class instruction, which will probably be on Fridays. And part 2 will be the idea that we will bring them to the IIT campus so they can sort of see the future, and that'll be part of the program as well. What turned out to be important in this thing was the students had a 2-hour window that was elective, so we didn't have to go through all of the CPS craziness, and I say that lovingly, in order to get this approved and implemented. But I can tell you that it became the anchor for, now we've added a media lab, a studio with Vic Mensa, we've added an AR, VR demonstration lab with technology, all donated. That's how it's growing, and we expect that that model will permit us to expand it to more and more schools. So, yeah. Yes.
Hi. Thank you for your presentation. You have used the term innovation in 85% of your slides. I'd like to know, how will you innovate community engagement so that IIT is no longer a silo that sits in the middle of the Bronzeville community? Can you talk a little bit about how you would innovate that?
Well, so I think, yeah. Well, I think that, first of all, I do think that our first job is to innovate on this campus and to distribute sort of this new way of thinking and new approach to things to all of the schools, and then to expand to programs beyond just the schools and just the university to the community. So we're talking to a variety of different organizations and also individuals throughout the community on different kinds of programs. Some of this, Pastor Chris Brown or Chris Harris We're talking to him about some programs. Israel Adonijah, we're talking to him about some things that he's doing he's trying to build a smaller incubator on, I think on 22nd Street or somewhere around there, Motorola. And, look, this is not sort of something you do by yourself. I mean, I think the answer is we want to say that we're open to, and the whole thing around the grid, I mean, this floor is really amazing, but we're talking about, increased transportation options, autonomous vehicles. We're talking about a lot of different issues around solar, around power, with ComEd, with other organizations. So I don't have a blueprint today, but I can tell you that we have resources and the ability to attract resources. And what the mayor said is absolutely right. I mean, the west part of the loop is pretty much over. It's just, and all of the growth, whether it's the Michael Reese site with Farpoint, whether it's DPI, which is just south of Roosevelt, these are all coming this way, and it couldn't be better for the community. And what you want to do is build an economic engine, but you want to keep the money in the community. The biggest problem with Whole Foods, my opinion, forget the subsidization. I mean, the biggest problem is if you're owned by a big corporation, the money doesn't stay in the community for more than about 15 seconds. I mean, maybe there's a few jobs, but local ownership, local growth of businesses that serve the community and that reside in the community is the only way you really raise the overall economic levels. So, okay. All right, well, thank you all very much. And I guess, are there boxes over there that indicate that there's food? Okay, good. Well, enjoy your lunch.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Again, we want to thank Howard for being a part of this series. This series will continue. There'll be some more activities such as this in the coming months. I do want to make a reflection on a couple of things that were said. It makes me think of some of the great innovators that were here. I can name a whole bunch of them, and maybe that's unique capacity I have. One is a gentleman called Nate Grant. Nate Grant used to be a part of this university and probably had more to do with more African Americans graduating from this university in engineering and graduating with little or no debt than anybody in the history of engineering education in the United States. Nate Grant is still alive. I'm going to try to do what I can to introduce Nate to Howard because Nate Thomas, Nate Grant's a filmmaker. Nate Thomas, my little sister, she knows Nate Thomas. Lisa Montgomery. Lisa and I used to work at DePaul University, and Lisa's been here how many years now? 15 years. I can't believe it. So she's been doing a lot working to recruit and allow women to be successful on this campus, and that's a phenomenal program. So Lisa Montgomery is somebody you should be introduced as well. Another person that I think of when I think is the giant of education, Silas Parnell. When I was, my mother, I had decided after, of all things, graduating from lab school, that I didn't want to go to college. I was going to, travel the world and go down Route 66 and, live off of something. And my mother said, yeah, well, that ain't going to happen. And she took me to meet a guy who was working out of Dearborn Homes. And he had a little small office at Dearborn Homes. And next thing I know, about 5 days later, I was on a bus going to Hampton Institute at the time. So that gentleman probably sent more people to college, period, than any known living human being. And also, again, allowing students to get resourced and graduate and finish school with little or no debt. The third program I think of that used to be here on the campus was a program called CHAMPS. And CHAMPS was a program that was started by, I don't even know who started it, but it had to do with getting African Americans, not from the campus, but from the community who had an interest. What? Okay, so again, I'm not going to take up too much time, but I think it's important to recognize that, and just like some of the questions we received, it's really about engagement, creativity, out-of-the-box activity, not really planned from the top down, but from the bottom up, and of course, lifelong learning today. chances are many of you, just like Howard. Howard got a law degree from Northwestern, never practiced law in days of life as far as I know. So he was able to figure out some other things along the way that probably contributed more to what his capacity is now than what he did when he was on the campus in Evanston. Same thing is true for everybody today. It is a level playing field. You can take classes from MIT right now. Some of you can take for free. So if you get it, get it. If you want to make something happen and make an institution accountable, you can do that too. So one of the things that we represent here at the Community Development Partnership and also the Urban Innovation Center is we didn't ask anybody if it was okay for us to innovate.
That's right.
We didn't ask for permission, not necessarily to be here today, but we're here. So we can keep it up. We can't keep it up without you. We thank you so much. Please make sure that you tell someone else about this activity that we're doing. We want to do more of this. We can't do it without support. Your support is what makes all the difference. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce. So our lunches are here, and I wanted to take the opportunity to thank our lunch sponsor, which is Schneider Electric. We have a representative from Schneider, Drew Gravett, that is here today. And Drew, I know we're running late, but I still just wanted you to come up for a moment because we've been packing a lot of information in today with the microgrid tour. And I asked Drew to please share something that I was on a double microgrid tour that not only included what was going on here at IT, but also shared at the microgrid conference what Schneider was doing at the Shed Aquarium. And so we said, could you just share a few of those where I'd like to let people grab their lunch as soon as we see that. But he said he had a couple slides that would just give you a little bit of an overview of what I saw, because I just think that it's good to see this whole perspective of what we're innovating here in the innovation metropolis. Yeah. So thank you again for lunch, and if you can share with that, we'll enjoy lunch and some other announcements.
Yeah, why don't we grab lunch and then I'll run through a couple slides there.
Great, thank you.
Now it gets things set up here. Energy is now actually being consumed more rapidly, although more efficiently, but kind of the electrification is, I guess I kind of think about this too, of all the things. So when we at Schneider, we look at this and we have these challenges that we're about to face, right? So what's great is we'll have the electrification of the grid and all things we do. So, you know, that would allow energy, a kilowatt's kind of a kilowatt, but how that kilowatt's generated, there's a lot of different ways to go about that. We want that to be from cleaner sources, as I think all of us do. You know, the decarbonization, which is, you know, basically making everything more efficient. You know, when you look at buildings and how they run today versus the potential to run much more efficiently, that's a huge opportunity. And then decentralization, again, a lot of our energy today is centrally generated, i.e. in large facilities that are using fossil fuels or non-renewable sources, and we need to find ways to bring that closer to the actual usage. So we talked a little bit about, again, microgrids is my area of expertise. What we find people really care about is three different things. You know, first is always cost, right? Making energy at a price point that's affordable for end users. That's what they concern. That's generally what drives a project and allows microgrids to be built. This resiliency, the grid is usually seen with more superstorms like Sandy and, you know, just natural disasters in general, whether, you know, they're increasing or just as they happen all the time. Our processes are more critical than they've ever been. We have to find ways to make sure that when the grid loses power, the people who are using that power can at least at a minimum maintain their critical processes. So customers really care that if they lose power because of the grid, they have to find a way to keep running to allow themselves to, you know, be the business they are. And then, unfortunately, lastly, but is definitely moving up the list, is sustainability. So we've seen huge goals being set by Apple and Google, you know, who are really, even Toyota, who are changing even the entire value chain of how they get products. So they're putting a lot of pressure on their suppliers of products to also move and set sustainability, low carbon, energy efficiency goals that are driving, again, this move to kind of the microgrids, the adding solar, adding batteries that can charge at night from from cheap wind, so on and so forth. So when we talk about what a microgrid is, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So it's really it's an integrated energy storage system that has generation and load paired up together. And in some cases that can operate in parallel with the grid and actually provide services to the grid. So as IIT can, if ComEd has an outage, we saw some of that, the ability to support the grid outside of even itself. And then, obviously maintain its electrical infrastructure and its critical systems in the case that the grid's not there. So it's sort of pairing up these generations and loads with a lot of different types of resources. I won't go into kind of all the different things we do. I don't think that's as important. I think as Howard was sort of saying earlier, the model is really changing. So, right, microgrids are, again, this great opportunity where really we're seeing a lot of PV, a lot of solar, a lot of batteries, a lot of wind that are making on-site generation a lot more possible for big users and even small residential. But where the model was really kind of turning on its head is this, what we call microgrid as a service. And it's an opportunity where historically somebody has to make this large investment up front. They no longer have to do that. Organizations like ours and others are able to, basically take this as as you just continue to buy electricity as you otherwise would. It's finance, it's microgrid as a service, and then you have all the benefits without all the upfront costs, so that you can, have cleaner, more sustainable, more reliable energy. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Shed Aquarium. I think that's been an incredible partner for us. We started there around 1996, Schneider did, and was the first true smart aquarium in that they put in PLCs that did a better job of managing water flow. So you can imagine big filtration systems there. The temperature, maintaining the environments. They've got quite a few of those. And then being able to kind of manage and monitor that, not from a manual point, but really from a computer. So a much more efficient way of running an aquarium. We're a sustainable partner. That all kind of started when we installed the solar system, the PV system in 2013. We've got a lot of different solutions. I think what this represents is really things that they're doing that are very progressive, are smart, and kind of what I would say is optimized systems. So you look at a large battery storage, which I'll talk about here shortly. You have an extensive amount of metering there that really allows them to understand where their electrical use is and be able to pinpoint when they have issues. You've got really smart building automation system that actually pushes all that information into the cloud. And then through cloud computing, we're able to run a lot more detailed optimization algorithms and find issues, find heat loss that an on-site system wouldn't really have the computing power or wouldn't, be kind of economically feasible to put some sort of a computer on site that could manage that type of an analysis. And then these variable frequency drives, it used to be that water would just sort of run through the aquarium and then you would manage that flow by a valve, right? Sort of turning a valve, but the motor would run the same speed. With technology, we're able to sort of slow that water down on a motor and take advantage of the efficiency curve and thus reduce energy. It's no longer sort of valve controlled. The PV system that we installed in 2013 and part of our partnership with them, which I think, again, corporate partnerships are so important in this evolving, sustainability landscape. 265 kW, it produces about 315 kilowatts a year. It is a interesting installation in that we installed it on the Oceanarium, and the Oceanarium was originally architected after the idea of a nautilus. So you have a shell shape, right? And what's a little tough to see, but those are actually tilted upwards. So we mimic the design, and you actually have a kind of a tri-tilted system, which so you can see it sort of, it turns and then it tilts, and then they're all tilted south too to take advantage of the sun being obviously further south from us. So today this is our first, I think the first phase. Shed has ambitions beyond this to install solar along the bus turnaround here, right now you have this as the Stingrays exhibit. You can imagine that today that's a tent that would be solar, and then the walkway here, solar. And then the museum campus has actually recently issued a RFI for a solar and future microgrid amongst the Alder Planetarium, the museum, Soldier Field. So they're really looking closely at putting a lot more renewable energy actually out on the museum campus area. So that's kind of was the first phase, I think, that kicked off Shed's journey, and from that they really have installed a lot more solutions. The most recent of which is the battery storage. So we have a 1 megawatt, 250 kilowatt battery storage system by Eagle Pitcher is the battery manufacturer. Schneider does all the monitoring and the switchgear, kind of the electrical infrastructure that supports it. And what this does is frequency regulation in the PJM market. So PJM is our ISO here. A lot of people don't know. So you have ComEd that is locally delivering our energy, kind of managing our electrons. But PJM is managing our grid overall, I guess, on a much larger scale. So they have markets that people can participate in. They can, in this case, this battery is bid into a real-time market, which pays for frequency regulation, which is managing the 60 hertz of the grid. So making sure that we kind of have clean power that meets our voltage requirements. And by charging and discharging, you can almost think of it like a hose. And that hose, when it becomes too much electricity is on the grid, you need to take electrons off, right? So you can kind of meet the 60. So we almost think of going from 60, 60.00 to 60.002. That hose starts to get too big, and the battery would charge to relieve the grid a little bit. And then in the other way, if there's not enough electricity on the grid, you're 59.98, the battery would be commanded to actually discharge electricity from it and put electricity back on the grid. So that's kind of how the battery works today. Other opportunities, and I think why the market's so interesting and the models are changing, is that this battery could be used for other things. So today we're just sort of doing frequency regulation. It could be used for demand response. ComEd could call on this because it's a very hot day and they need to reduce overall load, and so the battery could be discharged into the markets. It could be used for backup, so it's paired up with the generator and provide additional backup power, or it could be used for what we think of as real-time pricing. So again, the market today is that you pay a certain price for electricity, but the reality is electricity costs vary for the actual deliverer of electrons. So you buy an electric contract, and that's sort of an insurance policy to yourself, I guess, right? And you pay a premium for that because then you just sort of pay the same amount. But in the future, much like what Tesla's doing, you can buy energy the same way anybody else buys it, the large users buy it, and therefore you could actually buy energy in the middle of the night when, for example, Indiana's windmills are blowing hard and the energy is cheap and relatively free, and you could charge up your energy. And then in the day when it's expensive and might require that they turn on poor efficiency peaker plants, there's a lot of peaker plants out there that are running that are not as efficient as our base load generation, you could discharge your battery and you would just be essentially discharging low cost electrons. So like I said, the model's changing from a one-way flow of electrons to a two-way. The opportunities to do this, where you wouldn't have to buy a battery, you would just buy this as a service but get all the benefits, that's evolving very quickly. And the types of resources that you can use to do this, again, I think that's another huge opportunity. I know the flywheel guys are here, which is interesting technology as well, right? I mean, that's where I really look forward to the future. We don't really know what it holds because there's so many different ways of not only generating electricity, but even just managing it more efficiently too. So again, I very much appreciate being a part of this group and the opportunity to sponsor. We're honored to have had a chance to tell you a little bit about microgrids in general, and specifically a great organization, the Shed Aquarium, and what they're doing to further sort of advance the education about these types of systems and the opportunities that are becoming more available to large corporations, medium, small. I mean, really, these are available to anybody, and look forward to the future and continuing to stay involved.